Hi everyone, Temmie here with my second ever video for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. We'll talk about what's going to make it so different from recent MMOs and what's going to keep it unique against newer MMOs that are coming up in the next couple of years. So if you want to hear about all that stuff, stay tuned. Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is a classically spirited MMORPG upcoming from producers Visionary Realm in the next year or so. It's bringing back a lot of old-school features that have honestly been lost in the genre for decades. Things such as true challenge, limited or no instancing, and class identity will splice with some newer features such as intelligent, adaptive AI and a climate system, and will create a very unique experience. In this video, we'll go through a lot of these things I just mentioned one at a time and talk more in depth about them. Games haven't been particularly challenging on the MMO front for quite a few years now. Oftentimes, games will implement a grind, wherein by doing the same thing repeatedly, you'll make incremental progress towards your goal, or time gating, where you might have to do something but can only do it once a week or once a month, and so therefore are limited, or gear challenges, where by reaching a certain gear score or item level, you can proceed past a certain boss's damage thresholds. But these things aren't really true challenge. True challenge requires coordination and forethought and planning. If you mess up once, you might wipe the entire group. Something that is so precise and so specific that you have to know the fight in and out and understand your class and understand the classes of the people around you in order to make it work. This type of challenge is something we haven't seen in MMOs for quite a long time, and this is exactly what Pantheon is going for. Now don't misunderstand, I'm sure that there will be gear thresholds that must be met in order to accomplish certain tasks and defeat certain bosses. After all, what is vertical progression if not gear score? And I'm sure that there will be some types of grinds for reputation or rare items or what have you, though they are saying they're going to give us more interesting grind than simply killing 10,000 bears. I suppose it's a combination of all of these things that creates true challenge. And it is this depth and complexity that is going to make Pantheon a truly engaging game to play. Furthermore, to give us a real sense of danger and thrill, there's going to be a relatively strict death penalty. We're not sure exactly what this might be, but it will most likely involve corpse retrieval and experience loss. If you have experience with some of the games in the first generations of MMORPGs, like Asheron's Call and EverQuest, you might remember something a little bit different than what we see as commonplace today. In those games, if you went into a dungeon, you weren't magically transported to a duplicate reality wherein that dungeon was yours and yours alone and no one else could enter it. No, you were put inside that dungeon in that same cohesive, existent world. And if someone entered the dungeon directly after you, they would be in that same dimension, that same server or instance. The creation of these duplicate dimensions is known as instancing, a term which I'm sure most here are familiar with. Games adopted this perhaps because of server limitations, or just to reduce the contest between players. Regardless of the why or how this practice started, it isn't the design goal that Pantheon has in store for us. They want us to rely on each other and help each other out wherever possible to build a strong, healthy community. And it's a lot harder to do this when so much of the game is actually shutting you off from everyone else in the game. This ties in with our next point, which is class identity and also class interdependency. Not only do they want all of the classes to feel unique and special and cool in their own way, but they want us to have to rely on each other to access different parts of the game and to find success in different ventures. I mean, what's the point of having different classes if they all essentially do the same things and all pretty much have the same capabilities anyway? Each class will have their own unique and diverse skill set. And as you progress through the game, you may discover that there are things that you can't do without someone else with a particular skill that you don't have. But that's just how they want the game to be. They figure, why are you playing an MMO if you just want a solo? Now, there will be some solo content, but it definitely won't be as diverse and bountiful as the group content, which the game is centered around. One of the coolest things that Pantheon has going for it, or rather that it will have going for it when it launches, is this intelligent adaptive AI. Now, those are two different things, right? Intelligent AI is just artificial intelligence that does something relatively complex. Maybe it has a really long string of commands that it follows. Now, to me, adaptive AI is when it's actually reacting to the world around it and not just blindly following its commands. Now, one example that we were given from a recent AMA with Brad McQuaid is that if you overwhelm a mob with insane numbers, perhaps it'll just run instead of fight you. Or maybe it'll call for backup. Or perhaps the Den Mother, or whatever that may be, whatever mechanic it is, that essentially changes the AI such that you're faced with an equal challenge. In addition to this, we've been told that different mobs will have different sort of personalities. One of them might, for example, be called a bruiser. Now, this is just speculation here, disclaimer. We haven't been given too much information about this particular feature, but maybe this bruiser type just blindly attacks whatever's in front of him. Maybe there's a coward archetype. Maybe this one just always runs. Maybe there's one that's really smart and always goes for the ranged guys or the healers. We have been told that there will be some types of personalities, just not the specifics. Going even further than this, they've also told us that they'll have dynamic events that span regions or perhaps an entire continent. So this means that as we push back an ogre force, perhaps the wolves that were being eaten by the ogres suddenly rise up, and now we have a wolf attack on a nearby village. This is another thing that we haven't been given too much detail about, but we have been told that it'll be in-game. The last big topic I want to talk about is the climate system. And honestly, this topic really deserves its own video because to me it's really, really huge. Having a climate system where you have to acclimate to different climates creates this entire multiverse of horizontal progression. While you may have the gear and acclimation to survive really well in a frosty tundra, there's no way that you're going to be able to survive in a dragon's magma-filled lair without some proper gear. So you'll have to go through this entire process of re-gearing and outfitting yourself just to do relatively similar things in a different environment. This is exactly the type of thing that I believe can create a really long-lasting community, where the game gives you so much content to do at every level. Now, one big topic that I really haven't mentioned so far in this video is the perception system. Now, this is being kind of advertised as just a different take on the typical questing system, but I really think it has a lot more depth to it, and I really want to go into detail with this particular feature, so I'm actually going to be making a separate video for it, so stay tuned for that. There are a couple other things that you're probably thinking, well, Tammy, why didn't you mention these things? Some of those are the colored mana system and the progeny system, and honestly, we just don't know enough about those things for me to talk about them. I try to keep things pretty, in the light and speculation free as possible, so I really wouldn't have more to say than a few sentences about either one of those things. Perhaps as we get more information, I'll do a video about those two topics, but for now, this is what we have, and I think it's enough to make Pantheon a truly special game.